All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today for today's BeWell Lunch and Learn titled You're Promoted, the New Manager. Today's kind of an exciting session. It's different as the intended audience is just for managers. So it's kind of a little different than our normal lunch and learns. So we hope you find this both informative and applicable to your everyday managerial positions. We are so excited to have Michelle Zellner back with us today. You've joined us in the past. You may recognize her. She joined us a few months ago for a lunch and learn session and did a phenomenal job. So we are so excited to have her back. But before I pass this over to her, I just want to make two quick notes. The first being that we are recording this session. So if you are unable to join us for the whole hour-long session or would just like to refer back to it at a different time, we will send the recording link along with a copy of the slides out in a follow-up email, and that should go out later this week, early next week. So look for that in your inbox. And secondly, if you have any questions or comments for Michelle throughout, please feel free to utilize the chat box or Q&A feature, and we will get to as many questions, comments as we can and as time allows for. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Michelle Zellner, and she will discuss the new manager position.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Angela. It is lovely to be back. As we were saying, May feels like forever ago, and yet it also feels like just the other day. So I hope you all had a fantastic summer, ready to kick into gear for a really great fall and wrap up to the year. If you have been recently promoted, congratulations. If you've been a manager for a while, awesome. I love that we have a mix because I think this is a conversation that really is best had when everybody is sharing their experiences, their challenges, their thoughts, their ideas. Because one of the things that is the reality is we don't all respond the same way. We don't have the same styles, and there's not necessarily one that is right or wrong, better than another. But it really is about learning and understanding and then utilizing the skills, being open-minded, learning to grow, being receptive, all of those things to help you be the most effective manager that you can be. So I am curious. We have 47 of you in the call. Let me just get a little gauge of my audience. How long have you been a manager? And maybe tell me a little bit about an area of growth that you know if you were a little better, or maybe a particular challenge that you have, that if you had some skills or tools, you feel like you could be a better manager. Can you already identify any of that? And hopefully, as we go along, we'll give you those tips and tools, but also feel free to share with anybody. If you want to keep it private, just send it to me, Michelle, your host. If you want to share with everybody, feel free to do that. A little background on me. I have my undergraduate degrees in psychology and nutrition from the University of Hawaii, and I have my master's in kinesiology from CU Boulder. You might be thinking, well, how does that qualify you to talk about how to be a manager? I mean, maybe that doesn't specifically, but I have had my own business for 25 years, and I have coached. I've been coached. I was a gymnast growing up, and in some ways a manager is a coach. I also do coaching, work with a lot of leaders and lots of in the realm of communication. So for the last 25 years, not only have been on my own journey to be a healthier, happier human, but have worked with people to help them get to the best place that they can get to as well. So looking at the outline here today, okay. Now this is really to highlight that everybody is in a different place, right? And everybody's coming from a different perspective. We all have different strengths and talents, skills, challenges. And I think a big piece of this is to make sure we're coming from that perspective. And Angela, I'm not sure if the chat is working because I have not received any chats. And normally with this many people, at least one person has answered my question.
Yes, we found out it was disabled, but it should be working now, so people can insert their comments in the chat.
Oh, excellent. I just
Thank you.
I know it works. Thank you. Ooh, 3 months. So that's, I would say you're in your infancy, right? That is very new. Well, congratulations. Oh, wonderful. Lots of new ones just started just a few months ago. So I think 6 months so far is the longest. Oh, this is fantastic. Oh, so much to learn and grow. This is wonderful. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, 5 years, but new to this organization. Wonderful. That I think that's a good point too, right? That management maybe in a certain place might look a little different from management in a different place, and when we're with different people, or the day-to-day tasks of the organization are different from the day-to-day tasks of maybe another organization that you've been in. So this is wonderful. Excellent. Thank you all for sharing. I appreciate that. And I know that you know how to use the chat box. So we should get lots of good conversation going today. All right, let's start here. And maybe some of you have already experienced this, right? We go from a subject matter expert to, to being in charge of people, kind of, right? Now, clearly, people who are in the subject matter that you are in, and it's not necessarily correlated that you are good at what you do, which means you are then good at helping other people with what you do. I could tell you stories and stories and stories about my dad's own experience with this in his career. That, the person gets promoted to a manager because they had the top sales. Well, selling is selling, managing is managing. It's very different. So this might be something that even already some of you are facing or figuring out. Number one, know that it is completely normal, right? And also it's to help you determine, what do you actually love about the job? I've had some people who got into the management role and they realized, you know what, I actually like the job. I like the subject matter. I don't like managing people. And that's normal too. But it's when we identify, and hopefully we have discovered that this is going to be a good fit before we get promoted. Sometimes you don't know until you're there, until you're actually doing those things. This might not be a dilemma at all, right? Maybe you are a subject matter expert and you already have those leadership traits. Maybe you're a natural leader, or it's something that you want to develop, because if you had the opportunity to develop those leadership traits, you would be a good leader. So this might not be a problem. In fact, there is some debate in certain places that I've been a part of, that they say, well, you don't have to be a subject matter expert to manage the people in that area. I don't know, maybe not an expert, but I think you need to know a little bit about it. You need to have some idea of what it looks like on the other side. So it's like so many other things. There's perhaps a nice balance and complement to these things. Think about, again, how long you've been in your current role, and clearly some of you very, very new, or maybe you've had that managerial experience, but it's just looking like in a different way today. All of that previous experience, whether it's from being in various roles prior to being a manager, or it's utilizing those leadership skills that you've already had the opportunity to hone and develop, and thinking about how those are going to transfer and translate into this new role that you have. And I would be curious, for those of you who have maybe been in management for a year or more, go back if you can to maybe your first month, your first 2 months in management. What was that like? What were some experiences, some thoughts? What were some challenges that you had? And let's just see if that resonates with those who are still in the first few months of theirs, if they're feeling and experiencing similar things. I think just from coaching and talking to people, both friends, family members, and clients, we have this expectation that we should be perfect the minute we become a new manager. Like, we should know everything, and we should know exactly how to do our jobs from day one. And we get a little frustrated and irritated and overwhelmed and down on ourselves because we don't. I think it's always important to remember that nobody steps into a role and is the best at it the minute you step into it. Everybody is learning. There's also going to be, depending on who you are now managing, there might be some challenge with that, depending on the relationship of the people you're now managing. And this is something that you're going to want to talk through with maybe EAP support, maybe just some friends, maybe your leadership, to figure out how to navigate the new dynamic of relationships. And I've worked with a lot of people who have had this issue go on where, they're all kind of friends, and then one gets promoted, even though a few of them were vying for the same job. And now that dynamic has shifted, and there's a lot that can go into that. All right, none of you managers of a year or more are sharing. All right, well then let me ask the newbies, how are you feeling? What are you excited about? What are you nervous about? What challenges do you already know are going to be challenging for you? These are other questions to ask yourself before you begin. We're a little past that because you've already begun, but hopefully these were questions that you've asked, as well as, were just presented to you, or the information was presented to you. Who are the people that will be on your team? Specifically, right? Not general vague, but specific people on the team. What are their duties going to be? And obviously, where are they working from? Where are they coming from? Maybe even not just logistically from the country, but specifically from where in the organization are they coming? Most likely some of them have been promoted at various times as well. So they haven't all just been in their roles and now you're taking over. What are the actual tasks, and who's going to be responsible for what? What do you think your greatest pressures are going to be, and what are theirs going to be? So these are things to, I think, not just ask yourself before you begin, but these are good questions to just be checking in on consistently. I think I'm going to share some of these things here. Subject matter expert going to a leader in the same department. Colleagues that I'm now in charge of. That, thank you for sharing that. That can be a tricky role, and we'll talk about that for a little bit. Assistant says, I've been a manager for a year. At the beginning, I had no idea who to go to for certain issues. A list of contacts would have been helpful. Very good suggestion. Transitioning is always hard. And I've worked with people who have, similar to you, gotten into a new role, and there are no protocols. There's no, who do I go to for this? There's no like binder, like, here you go, here's the blueprint. And this person I was working with decided that she didn't want to put the next person in that position. So as she is learning, she's making these notes and she's putting all of this together so that it can be an easier transition for the next person. I think that's a very kind, forward-thinking thing to do. And maybe that is that learning opportunity, right? The opportunity for growth to make transition, because transition is hard for everybody. And it makes it even more difficult when the person who's supposed to be in charge doesn't actually know what they're supposed to do or where they go to for that question or that answer. And so they end up wasting a whole bunch of time and effort and energy, get stressed out. We know what that does, when it could have been really simple. Like, okay, this is the navigator, right? How you do that. Let's see. Balance for employee is challenge. Keeping employees engaged with work, but not overwhelming them. Ooh, that's a good point. So understanding the great pressure and the challenges that you might face. And, I think it's a good perspective and good reminder to have that you are a certain type of employee. And, clearly you've demonstrated some skills or some traits that have gotten you promoted, but not everybody is you. And not everybody works to your capacity, has the same degree of understanding, experience, knowledge. So as the leader, you need to step back from that and remind yourself that the people that you are, that are reporting to you have varying degrees of all of those things. And I think a lot of a manager really is about that personal connection and understanding your people, and then learning to adapt and learning to shift, and knowing that this person learns best this way, but this person learns best this way. And a good manager is able to make those shifts. But that takes time. That is not something you're going to know within the first month or 2 months, or maybe not even in the first year, because all of these things take time. So I think that's a great point. COVID and remote work was difficult transition. Actually began my managerial role the first day of COVID. Oh, yeah, I know a lot of people either new job or new role like COVID. Well, nothing like learning by trial and error, right? I bet you developed a whole bunch of skills because of that experience that maybe you wouldn't have developed, or maybe you would have developed a lot later had you not, kind of been thrown into that right away. Let's see, excited to learn with the team and how to grow our department. Awesome. I don't feel I know enough because other managers can access things quickly, and I wonder if I'll ever get there. That's such a great point. I'm curious how long you've been a manager, and are you comparing yourself to somebody who's been a manager for a lot longer? And that is often what we do. I have a very dear friend, and she falls into the perfectionist category. And now I've been friends with her for many years, and she's had basically 3 new jobs since I've been friends with her. I can script it. I can script how this is going to go every single time. The first week, it's the worst job ever. I'm questioning my decision. I shouldn't have taken this job. I don't know anything. I'm so frustrated and stressed and da-da-da-da. 2 months later, oh my gosh, this is so great. I'm learning so much. I've learned so much in 2 months. I know I have a lot more to learn, but blah, 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 blah. Because she's perfect. And she thinks she should know everything the first week. And this has happened every single time. She just started a new job a few weeks ago, and it's the same thing. And I just always like to remind her that we've had this conversation several times now, and you need to be patient. So you've got to be patient with yourself. You have to be patient with the process. And I know that can be hard because there are expectations, right? Let's see. I'm new to the state and facility. Challenges are earning the confidence from the staff. Ooh, very good. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about confidence and trust and how you earn that. And I love that you phrased it that way, earning it. Sometimes you do have to earn it, right? It's not always just given to us. Now, sometimes people give it to you, and then they give it to you until you lose it, or they decide that you've lost it. Others are going to hold back and be hesitant, maybe comparing you to the amazing manager they had before, and you're just not like them. So, I think some kind of transition training idea, whatever, conversation for teams who have a new manager could also be helpful in facilitating these kinds of transitions. This is another good one: what to delegate, what to do myself. Let's see, lack of resources, supporting structure, phone numbers, listed responsibilities for managers who are promoted internally. I hope somebody in authority is making notes on these things, because that sounds like a really critical thing that is necessary to have those resources, right? The supporting and reporting structure. Seems kind of basic, but sometimes when you know and you do the job, you don't realize that, yeah, this is basic to you. Well, it's not basic to somebody else who's just stepping in, right? You have to imagine that you were just dropped in, and you want someone to do their job. Well, what do you need to give them to be an effective leader? Let's see, you guys, y'all are great. Okay, I don't think I can read all of these, or we are never going to get through them, but keep them coming, because I will definitely do that. Communication, gosh, so much of it comes down to communication, to effectively communicate, as well as to comprehension. So I think I am communicating effectively, but if you are not comprehending what I am trying to communicate, then it doesn't matter how effective a communicator I am. And it's always good to remember that we give and receive communication in very different ways. We respond to things very differently. I was a gymnast growing up, and we had a husband and wife coaching team, and it was kind of good cop, bad cop. That was a little bit of it. But I've always been fascinated just by observing human behavior and observation. And there were some girls on my team who really did get motivated by negative reinforcement. There were other girls on our team that just sent them into, a negative spiral. And I think, again, learning and finding the balance. And I mean, I have to give my coaches a lot of credit because they learned. Now, what can be difficult is when you have a team, and obviously that's what you have. When one person witnesses somebody treated a certain way and then being treated a different way, well, that might be a little confusing, and that might cause some tension within the team and tension then towards you. So I think communication and talking with your team regularly, being open to yourself, you being open, right? Remembering that at some point you were in that role or a similar role, and maybe you had a new manager and maybe you had some thoughts and feelings about that. So I think that perspective is always helpful to keep in mind. Generally speaking, in a positive manner, however, also being honest. So talking about earning trust, right? Being authentic, honest, vulnerable, transparent. And that can be a difficult line because you still are, you got to show strength, you got to show competence, you have to show that I know what I'm doing. And there are very nuanced ways that we do both. I just did an on-site workshop for another group, and the leader, I was so impressed because he stood up in front of his group and said, I struggle with this. And I'm realizing in the things that we're talking about that because I haven't dealt with the thing I struggle with, I'm actually projecting it onto all of you. And that's not fair to you. So I'm going to do my work. And I'm going to work hard to not project this onto you. I'm going to reevaluate the way I've been booking things and all this stuff. And for him to stand up in front of the crew and say, wow, I now I'm understanding I've been going about this in not a really great way. That endeared them to him. Now, he was already, they already trust and believe in him. But I think that only strengthens those bonds as well. So you think about how you would like to be communicated with, and are you doing that to your team? And of course, the listening piece is absolutely critical as well. I think very often it's easier to talk than it is to listen. So we have to brush up on those communication and those listening skills. And then we figure out what to do going forward from there. All right, so let's talk about coach versus manager. And honestly, I think it's a coach and manage situation, right? They're a little different. I mean, if you know baseball, there's a coach and there's a manager. So what is it, right? And what makes an effective coach? And I'd be curious what you all think about these and how you utilize the different traits and skills that you have to hone and develop the people that you're in charge of. And what does this look like in your own life? I think coach is about skills, like, the correction. I'm just going back to a sports analogy in gymnastics. A coach looks at the mechanics of what you're doing. And if they're not quite right, then let's work on the mechanics. A manager looks at how are we going to do practice? Like, what events are we doing? What specifically are we working on each event? When do you need a break? How many days are we practicing? Right? That kind of stuff. So coach to me is a little bit more into the details, and a manager is more big picture. But as the leader in this kind of situation, you are both. You have to be able to hone in on the details to make sure the mechanics are proper. And you want to look at the big picture of what's going on with an individual as well as with the team. And, these are things that, again, they come through practice, and they come through going through leadership and development trainings and things like that. So I think that's a really big piece of this. Let's see. Yeah, coach for success. I love it. And for encouragement and building self-esteem. Yeah, I think all of those things, and they're both important, right? Now, you might have people on your team that need more coaching than somebody else. It doesn't mean they're less than, it just means they need more coaching. Maybe they haven't had the experience, they learn in a different way, they don't learn as quickly, they're not comprehending as quickly. That's fine. That's what we want to do, is make sure that we're building somebody's confidence to continue to be part of that team. How do you build confidence in your team? So going to the person who said they, are looking forward to earning the trust. Do you feel like your reports or your direct reports trust you? And if so, why? What are some of those traits that you think have helped build that trust? How have you gained their trust? Has there been anything in your own current situations already, whether it's within this role or a previous role that you've had, and either side of it, you're the leader or you're the direct report, where trust was broken? And why was it broken? Specifically, what happened? What is it about it that made either you not trust or them not trust you? This is excellent. Mean what I say and make sure my expectations are clear. Yes. Clarity, expectations, modeling behavior. We talk a lot about, burnout at work, and take your breaks, and we have these wellness programs, except that the leaders don't do it. I want all of my team to take their breaks and to self-care, but I'm not going to do it because there's too much work to do. I mean, I think you build confidence in your team by leading by example, right? And yeah, doing what you say, being clear, outlaying expectations, but then also by modeling it. And that's difficult to do sometimes. Let's see, trust was broken when I was talked down to, the conversation was punitive. Oof. Yeah, so that is where, hopefully you are going to take that experience. And my guess is you've already done it and you recognize how to speak appropriately with somebody else. And a lot of times people don't even know they're doing it. They really don't. It's just a lack of awareness. And, hopefully as we kind of bring more light to all of this stuff and we have more conversations around these things, the generations coming up and the ones who are already there were open to learning and growing and understanding how to kind of just shift a little bit to make that a more effective conversation. We do a lot of monitoring behavior, and I do take my time off. I'm guessing that you're a manager, to model that good behavior and for yourself to take the time off, and identifying, what is going on with your people. And it's such an important piece of it. When I think about, and maybe you think about this, whether you've been in a role already or you can think of a company or a situation that you've been in where you're like, wow, that's really good. They really do that well. It usually is things like recognition, that we do team building things. We have things that bring us together because we are a team. We want cohesion. And COVID made that obviously really difficult. People got very creative, but then people got very burned out. And I would say there's still, burnout, Zoom burnout, meetings burnout. This is one of the biggest issues I hear. It's just meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And the example I was giving where I did the on-site workshop, he realized I am just booking way too many meetings. There's no real reason for all of that. So he was going to go through his calendar and really be thoughtful about who has to attend what, and not make this like, hey, everybody, because then there's obviously that pressure to be there, right? This is fantastic. I agree. Crucial conversations is a must for my management team. I've been a leader for dozens and currently a director, and wanted to listen because I'm always open to learning. Yes, that is such a great program, Crucial Conversations. If you haven't heard of it or done it, just look it up. It is fantastic. And it really just arms you with the tools and the awareness and those skills. And I think you become a confident leader when you have been open and been offered the opportunities to see the different perspectives and the different challenges that you might face, rather than just going about doing what you do and now here's a challenge and I don't know what to do with it. So being proactive to set yourself up for success, I think, is huge. I know someone who has to take fake PTO so they can get their own work done and not have meetings that interrupt their day. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is a universal situation. It's a universal issue, and I mean, I wish I knew how to change that. And sometimes you do what you got to do, and I don't know how to stop like the meeting frenzy and the back to back to back to back. It's not good on any level. We don't learn well that way. We can't focus that way. We can't get our work done that way, and we're sitting too much in front of a screen. So there's all kinds of things. So I think, yeah, protecting your space, and if they found that to be a good solution, then that can be a good one for maybe some other people to think about. Let's see, listening, being heard, and making sure staff feel that they are being heard. Those are some things that are important as well. I agree. I think the listening is a big one. And I want to talk about being heard for just a moment, because I've worked on this with both sides before. And I want for you as a leader to, yes, you want to listen. You want to make sure people feel like they're being heard, but also understand that sometimes people say, well, I'm not being heard because they're not getting what they want, right? Because they're not getting the outcome that they want. I hear you. I just don't agree with, or it's not possible to do what you want. So having those kind of conversations, and I think the opening, ways to have those, or the open-minded ways to have those conversations. And obviously it takes both parties to understand that. So I'm only speaking to the managers right now, that you might get some people who say, well, I'm not being heard. And you're like, but I do hear you. I'm listening. The reality is I can't give you what you want. And that doesn't mean you're not being heard. It just means you're not getting what you want. And there's a big difference. So just be aware of that too, that being heard doesn't mean you always have to give them what they want, because sometimes that's just not possible. It's just not a realistic option. Now, maybe there is a way to, come to a better conclusion or come to some kind of compromise. So obviously that is where we want to be open about some of these things. Yes, excellent. So from the leadership standpoint, being open to listening to the constructive criticism that the team provides. As a leader, you need to understand when you are not listening, but more importantly, allow the team to vent so that you as a leader can improve. Excellent point. I think sometimes because we are leaders, we think that we're right. And I can't have underlings, I'm putting that in quotes, tell me I'm doing something wrong. I'm not going to listen to that. And a good leader is open to that, because, whether you've been in your role for a month or 100 years, things change, and, there are things you don't know, and there are always new things that will bring about a different perspective. So I think the open-mindedness, the growth mindset, always, doesn't matter how long you've been somewhere. If you go forward with the growth mindset, that will earn trust and confidence for sure. Thank you. Excellent point. Going to the I don't know what to delegate and I don't know what to do myself. So the matrix that I use, that I found to be very, very helpful, and I'm going to just kind of spell it out. So if you have a piece of paper, this will make it very clear. And you've probably seen something like it. So just make a cross so that there are 4 quadrants. Okay, it's the urgency and importance matrix. So the bottom left corner, draw an arrow from the bottom up and label that one urgent. And then the bottom left corner from left to right arrow and label that important. Okay, so urgent and important, they converge in the top right quadrant. That is urgent and it's important. You do it yourself and you do it now. Okay. Urgent and important, you do it yourself, you do it now. Or if you have somebody that you 100% trust to do it now and to do it right, you delegate it. Urgent, but not important. So that's the top left quadrant, right? It's urgent, but it's not important. So you delegate that. It's not important. So there should be somebody on your team. And I'm not saying they're only capable of doing unimportant things, obviously, right? But it's urgent. So somebody has to do it. But it's not that important. So you don't have to do it necessarily, right? There should be somebody on your team that can do it. So now we go not urgent, but important. So that is the bottom right quadrant. So it's not urgent, so it doesn't have to be done now, but it's important. So either you do it or somebody who you have 100% confidence has the skills. It goes on their radar, it goes on their to-do list. You give a deadline, you put a boundary, you talk about it. When will it become urgent? Let's hopefully get it done before then. Okay, but that is something you can delegate. And then we have that bottom left quadrant, not urgent, not important. So I don't know who does that. Maybe it doesn't even have to be done at all. I don't know. So within the workforce, obviously you're going to want to figure that out, but this is a good matrix even for your own self. You know, look at how you're spending your time and your energy. And are you spending time and energy on things that are not urgent and not important? A lot of times we are, which means that doesn't leave a lot of that resource for all the other stuff, right? So that might be a helpful way to identify what you delegate and what you do yourself. Certainly organization is going to be very, very critical. It's also going to be hard for people who are used to control, right? Used to having control. This can be a hard one for you to let go of. And I will tell you that this is one of the biggest reasons for leadership burnout, is because they still feel like they should be doing it all. They haven't allowed their team to fly. They're afraid that a mistake will be made and then it's going to cause more time, energy, money, stress. Maybe it's going to reflect on you. And so we'd rather not have that mistake. And so I'll just do it all. Except you can't. It just, for most part, is not going to be possible to do it all and do your job and be a healthy human. And you are not allowing those teammates to hone and develop their skills. That's how they learn, is by doing things and recognizing that they're not going to do things right. There are going to be mistakes. That's normal. Yes, allowing the team to fail. That is the hardest part, I would imagine. So even, I would say for you as a leader, reframing it and communicating this to your team, because they don't want to fail either. But it's not failure. This is how we learn and grow, right? There would be no need to learn and grow if everything went exactly the way it's always supposed to go. But when in life is that reality? When does life or everything you do in life go exactly the way it's supposed to go? I mean, if you have that life, please tell us how you've done it, because I think the rest of us would love to know. So even in the conversation, you want to build the confidence in your team to know that this is part of the growing process and we're all here to learn and grow together. And I am going to let you do it. If you don't have the confidence, if you struggle, then I'm going to maybe partner you up with somebody else on the team to shadow, to learn from, or come to me. Let's talk about it, right? We'll do performance reviews. We'll have that open door policy so that you aren't afraid to ask. You aren't afraid to say, I don't really get it, or you aren't afraid to say, I am overwhelmed, because it's when we're afraid to speak up that we're only going to cause stress and probably make mistakes, and it's just going to snowball from there, and then it affects everybody on the team. So I think releasing that control and really being willing to let them struggle and fly. And I think, when I look at really good leaders, I think a good leader, if I look at somebody that's a good leader, it's not necessarily what they are doing. It's how is their team? Because that's right, that's what a leader is, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And in terms of productivity, how is their team? You might be doing everything great, but your team is suffering. They're stressed out. They're not happy. They're physically, mentally, and emotionally not in a good place. Now, that doesn't have everything to do with you. Obviously, there are a lot of things that factor into that. But does it have a little bit to do? I don't know. Maybe it's something to kind of be aware of. Allowing the team to develop and cross-training is so important for the continual day-to-day productivity, especially with a small staff. Absolutely. Mention the lists. Yeah, the lists that also assist with eliminating any guesswork when someone leaves. Beautiful. I've been involved with management trainee programs and just doing some workshops for them. And they're very robust, and certain organizations have management training programs where it is 6 months or 3 months in every aspect of the company. It's pretty robust, because if you're going to be a manager, yeah, you want to know what it's like to work that overnight shift. You want to know what it's like when you're out dealing face to face with customers. You want to know what it's like when the supply chain didn't get you your stuff, and now your production crew is like, you want to know what that's like. So you have that perspective, you can be relatable, and maybe you've had that experience, like, okay, well, this is how we handle it, right? So yeah, I think cross-training, so helpful. And then for sure, for when people leave or there's a gap or whatever it is, that people can step in and then do the work. Excellent point. Love it. So what type of delegator are you? And you might not know this yet, right? You might not know because maybe you haven't had enough experience, but a couple of things, right? The dumper dumps and leaves. Probably not good, because you do need to follow up. I mean, that is still the role of a manager, right? You have to oversee what's going on. So my coach will say, hey, you need to do 5 beam routines, you need to do 3 bar routines, and you need to do 50 of this trick where you stick it. If coach is never going to follow up, I don't know, maybe I did 2 bar routines, and maybe I only did 1 beam routine, and then I sat and watched my phone for the rest of the practice. But if I know my coach is going to check up on me, yeah, I'm probably going to do it, most likely. So don't be a dumper. The micromanager checks in every single minute, right? This is a hard one, especially breaking free of that control. At some point, you just got to let them fly. The strict delegates with fear or with threats. Usually people don't respond well to that. So think about your tone and think about the expectation that you are laying out. Are you clear? Is it concise? Is it understood? Are they comprehending? And, and why is this task important or whatever, right? So we can be strict, but not to do that through fear or some kind of intimidation or threats. The player, it's exactly what it means. You want to be friends with everybody. You want everyone to like you. I mean, while we would love that, right? The reality is that's not your job. And it's probably not going to work out well, because there's going to be perceived favoritism and maybe, yes, I want you to relate to us, but I also still want to look up to you as a leader. So we got to walk that line with how buddy and how, what kind of friendships there are. And that can be really difficult when you have been parallel colleagues and now you've taken on the management role. And there are going to be situations, no doubt. And that's a hard thing to separate, but you're going to want to really be mindful of that and navigate those conversations sooner rather than later, and lay out those expectations and have the conversation. I think transparency is always a good idea. So we even just say it out front, like, look, I know you weren't my best friend, and now I'm your manager. And we can still be best friends outside of work, but here, you are on level playing field with everybody else. And then you have to make sure that you are doing that. So, and, you know, we can have the conversation with the team even, so that it doesn't, you know, it's out there in the open, and that you're going to work hard to make sure that we're all level and that you're treating everybody consistently, and, you know, in the same way. And then, you know, all of the above, right? So a mix in a lot of different ways is maybe necessary. It just is. So this is where, with experience, you will start to figure out how it works and how it works best for you and for your team and for the particulars of your organization. But just a couple of things to be aware of here. The workplace climate. You know, the workplace is composed of a whole bunch of little teams, really, right? And the teams are composed of a whole bunch of humans. So whatever it is, you control you, and you have some degree of control of the climate of your team. You don't have probably control over the whole workplace, but you can control your environment and the characteristics and the leading by example, right? It's all the things that we talked about, and how you go about building these things is by having human connection. I mean, that's just at the root of all of this. It's human connection and conversation and empathy and compassion. You know, one of the things that COVID highlighted, of course, is when we are no longer physically connected, because we're not seeing each other face to face, it becomes a lot easier to forget that you're a real person. You're just a name coming through my email. That's it. And I can treat you differently because you're not a real person. And we don't maybe do that intentionally, but it can start to happen, right? Even if you don't feel like, or you don't realize it's happening. So I think the more human connection you can have, understanding that we're all different, we all have strengths, we all have different skills and talents, we all have gaps, we all have different perspectives, we all have different degrees of experience, and working with the team to help us all be cohesive. As humans, we are pack animals. We are supposed to be part of a pack. And so your team is your pack at work. And the benefits of being part of a pack are, there is someone there to support me. There is somebody there to guide me. There is someone there to nurture me. There's someone there to challenge me. There's someone there to hold me accountable. There's someone there to celebrate me. I have a very clearly defined role. I am valued. I am a contributing member of this pack. I'm needed. Right? These are all the things a human in general needs. And these are the things that actually build a very cohesive, dynamic, supportive, healthy environment. So you want to do what you can, obviously, to curate that. And not every member of the pack does all those things. You might have somebody on your team who's a great cheerleader. You might have another person on your team who really is a good teacher. You might have somebody else on your team who is such a great support to just guide and just to be there. You might have someone else on the team who, you know, does have the bird's eye and sees where, oh, there needs to be some accountability here, and we could just button this up there. And so as you go about and get to know your team, be identifying what skills and traits does that person have that they're bringing to the team. And then how can we communicate this and talk about it and build that cohesive dynamic? Because when the team succeeds, we all succeed. When one member of the team is not succeeding, that starts to impact every other member of the team, and then the team, and then the workplace. So control your environment, do what you can to really foster that really great, cohesive, healthy, positive pack to be part of. Performance reviews. I know a lot of managers really, this is something they don't love. Because it's time to give feedback. And while it's so great to give feedback when things are great, it's really hard to give feedback when there's difficult information to give. And you know how that is going to be received. It's going to be hard because nobody likes to be told. Nobody likes to hear criticism. That is universal. Remember, you control you. You cannot control what anybody else thinks or feels or says or does. You only control what you think, feel, say, and do. So you've probably been on the receiving end of a performance review before. How'd it go? Right? It's great when they give you great feedback. How did you feel when there was maybe some constructive criticism? Or maybe when there was something that was pretty negative and it was highlighted? If you have to deliver that kind of news, how are you going to go about doing it? I always encourage people to role play this before you have to go give your first performance reviews. Role play, especially the ones where you're delivering some hard news. There should be something within your protocols about how often the performance reviews happen. Lay out that expectation so everybody knows, right? Do not get personal. This is not about the person. It's about the work. It's about the productivity. It's about the facts of what you see. And think about then what is the plan, the protocol. It has to be clear. It should be documented, right? I know most of you probably gone through some kind of HR training of all the documentation that needs to happen. And then there's going to be a follow-up. There's going to be boundaries. There's going to be check-in. There's going to be some consequences. And then you have to enforce those consequences. All of that is really hard, but that's what you're in leadership for, because you've demonstrated that you are capable of doing hard things. And this is maybe one of the hardest things to do. This is excellent. I like to start with what they're doing good, and then I tell them what I believe they need to work on and why. I think that's great. Yeah. And maybe I would even start out by saying, you know what, we have two separate conversations. I first want to celebrate all the amazing things you're doing. There certainly are going to be some things that we're going to want to work on, and I want to show you why I think these can improve, and how I know they're going to benefit you when we brush up on these skills, and how I can help you improve. Right? I think that's all kind of part of being that leader is I want you to improve, but I also have to give you some skills and tools to help you improve. I can't just say you need to be better without then, helping to hone and develop those skills. So have all of that ready to go. And yeah, I think, a very robust performance review is the sign of a good leader. Because if I just tell you all the things that you did wrong and I don't give you any tools to help improve, well, then how did I help you? I didn't. So it is something you're going to want to take a lot of time to really think through. And this is a big piece of it right here, because part of your job as a manager and a leader is to hone and develop and lift up the people on your team so that they can go be leaders themselves, or can be the best team member that they can be, or can develop some skills that will then lead them into a whole new area that they are going to thrive in. All right, the final exam. How would you handle this employee? So this is just a little role playing as a manager. We have a few minutes here. This employee comes in right at 9, rushes out the door at 5, does just their job and nothing more, does not attend any of the company's functions or events. How do you handle this employee? Is there anything to handle? That'd be my question. I guess it depends what the expectation is. Is it a 9 to 5 job? Because if it is this somebody who's expressed interest in advancing? Well, then maybe there is something to say, look, I know you want to advance. I know you want to go here and there. This isn't going to do it, right? You have to show initiative. You have to show leadership. You have to keep developing new skills. You have to be challenged. Does it matter that they don't attend any of the company's functions? If they're happy that way and not doing it, no. But if they want to be a leader at some point, but you don't show up for anything, well, that's not going to build trust and confidence and help you get to know people and people get to know you. So maybe I would say, I'm just curious why you don't attend those. What is it? Maybe there is a social phobia. Maybe they're working hard to stay away from alcohol, and they know that there's a lot of drinking at company functions and they don't want to be around it. Maybe they have a special needs child and gosh, it's just all they can do to get to work. Right? I mean, this is why you have to know your people. Yeah, maybe I have a special needs child and I'm caring for my aging parent. It's amazing I even have a job. Maybe I need to celebrate the fact that I come in at 9 and I'm not late every day and that I stay till 5 and that I'm actually doing my job and not dropping the ball. So I think, we can judge and we can, make assumptions, but unless you know the person. Now, if this person used to come in early, used to stay in late, used to show great initiative, and now these things have changed, well, then something's changed. So I think conversations without judgment is critical. And don't assume the story, right? Don't assume that we know what's going on. This is why building that trust and having that open door and open mind policy to have an employee feel comfortable opening up and talking to you, that I think is the best way to go with handling this employee. Yeah, so good stuff. See, don't know there's anything to address. Maybe for this person, work is work and home is home. As long as they're productive, their attitude is good. Is there really a problem? Great point. There's nothing wrong with coming and going at their scheduled times, but the fact that they are not doing anything other than their job would raise a red flag. I would first ask if they feel overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed can make someone not able to assist others. Yep. Yeah, it feels like not a team player, right? Somebody said it reminds me of the term quiet quitting. I would start highlighting events to encourage participation for internal meetings, probably invite the person to come to me to attend something work related. They might have lost engagement and I'd have a conversation with them to see what they are interested in, maybe ask them to partake in committee or a project. Yeah, this person might be bored, right? They're not challenged anymore. Maybe they're experiencing burnout. These are all things as a leader you have to keep open-minded about, right? That you don't know the story until you have a conversation. And then based on that conversation, we'll see how we can go from there. And, also remembering that just because you are the go-getter and you arrive at 7 and you stay till 9, number one, I don't know that that's healthy, honestly. You should have a life, and there is more to life than work. Somebody else has found a different kind of balance, or maybe there is really something going on. And then we should know that. So we develop that degree of personal connection, and we can figure out maybe there is something I could help this person with. Let's see, when you make yourself accountable as you expect your staff to do, I find that opens the door to better understanding and communication. Love it, absolutely. Yep, talking about earning that trust. Realizing everyone is different and has different obligations in life. Also, some people may not have the desire to go above and beyond. They just like to fly under the radar. Yeah, I agree. So all kinds of great perspectives. Thank you very much. We just have a couple of minutes. So some additional resources that are super helpful here. Here we talk about the crucial conversations. Take a screenshot of this one, or I'm sure you'll get the slide deck with this information as well. These are really good reminders and things that can help you be a better leader. Of course, your EAP, the interactive toolkits. And as a leader and a manager, you should be well versed on the offerings that the EAP has. So you should also be talking about and promoting the EAP to your staff. There's lots of great toolkits and learning opportunities for growth. Of course, also the professional counselors. Even if you don't need a professional counselor, there's lots of different work-life benefits, consultations, referrals. It literally is like one of your best first phone calls to make or first avenues to explore. If you have any question or challenge about life, work-related or not, your EAP is there to support you. So be well versed on all of this, and at a team meeting, just promote the EAP. And when we have staff-wide trainings, be a leader and go to the meeting and invite your staff. Please, these are very informative. They're very helpful. Carve out the time for it. Model that example by doing it yourself. That's one of the best ways to get them on board. All right. And that is it. Angela, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. As always, that was a wonderful presentation, and it took us right up until 1. Thank you all who joined today, and we're a very responsive audience that really helped make the presentation go super well. So again, thank you, Michelle. Thank you to everyone who joined. We will be following up with an email this week with both the recording and a copy of the PowerPoint session. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. It was a great session. I appreciate all your interaction as well. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.